Alright guys, I got this Camry here. We're going to be replacing this Remy alternator, and the part number is 11060. That's the part number right there. All the Camrys are pretty much similar, so it's a quick little job, 4-cylinder, and this is a lifetime guarantee as long as you have the car. So we're going to put this alternator in. Alright guys, today I got a 2010 Toyota Camry, but all the other Camrys, similar setup, 4-cylinder is the same thing, okay? So we got a battery light on. It comes on and off intermittently, and we're gonna replace this alternator, okay? It's a common problem. If your alternator starts to get voltage and then it stops, your battery light will come on. So if you need to replace this alternator belt, procedure is same, but you do need to take out that second belt, which we're not gonna take off. So in our case, what we're gonna do is we're gonna remove this tensioner, not remove, but yank the tensioner to get the belt off. Then we're gonna take off this 14 here, and there's a 14 millimeter bolt right down there. So those bolts gotta come out. We're gonna open this clip up to get this harness out. We're gonna remove this connector here. Number one thing you should do is disconnect the battery, but if you do that, your throttle body is gonna lose memory, your car is gonna stall out. You don't want that. So what I like to do is I like to take this off. I usually take one of my old gloves and put it around here so I don't short circuit anything. So that's the way I'm gonna do. I'm not gonna disconnect the battery. Anyways, let me get my tools and we're gonna get this job started immediately. All right, the first thing what we're gonna do is we're gonna disconnect this little guy right here. This is the controls here. The alternator also has a fuse, but if the fuse blows, your battery light's gonna be on always. So we know, since the light going on and off, it's not the fuse. All right, so you're gonna push on this connector here, and this connector will come off. Next, you see this little guy right here? You're gonna use a flathead or a pick, like I have here, and you're gonna remove this little guy right here, and your connector right here will come out, and that's gonna loosen up your harness here. Probably got to do a little bit more. A little bit more right there. Okay. So this comes out. So now you're gonna have a lot of clearance here. Once you remove this one right here, this number 10, make sure you don't short circuit it. You can remove this whole thing to the side. But what we're gonna do is I'm gonna take off this belt first, so I need to pull that tensioner down there. So what are we gonna do is we're gonna take this number 14 here, and we're gonna yank on this tensioner. All right, you see that? You're gonna pull it towards you, and the belt's gonna be loose, and then you can simply just take off the belt. I just don't want it to block the view of the camera. All right, and here it comes loose. All right, there you go. So the belt is loose. We can just let it hang there. All right, you can leave your tensioner with the wrench on just like that. All right, so this is a very simple job that you could do at home yourself. You don't have to go to a mechanic or a dealer, pay like 800 bucks. All right, so we got two bolts. I showed you, one down there, one down there. But before that, let's take off this number 10. So the next step is I'm gonna remove this number 10 here on this, but don't use your ratchet that's gonna touch even the dipstick right there, because even the voltage is gonna travel through that and you're gonna damage something. So small little turns, make sure nothing gets grounded. Once it breaks loose, you hear that snap, then you can simply take off this little guy right here. If you want, you can put a whole bunch of tape on it, electrical tape. All right, so there it goes. Okay, so let's protect this, okay? You don't want this thing to touch anywhere. All right, so I'm gonna get some tape, or even if you want to use the gloves, and just wrap it around and give it a little knot with the fingers. All right, there you go. It's all nice and set. Okay, so the next step is here. We're gonna remove the 14 bolt right there. So ratchet with the number 14 will do the trick. Alright, once the bolt is loose, you should be able to turn by hand. If you can't, just keep going with the ratchet till it's free playing. Alright, so I'm gonna take off this bolt first because it's the harder one, and the one on the top is very easy to take off. And to reverse it, we're gonna put the easy one in because the easy one is gonna hold it for us and it's gonna guide everything else. Alright, so it's pretty much loose. All I need to do is put my hands in there and get this bolt out. There you go. That's the little bolt down there, 14 millimeter. Alright, so number 14 here also. So this bolt is going to be really tight. You need to get a long ratchet. Okay, once you have a long ratchet, like this one right here, we're going to just break the threading loose. Once it's loose, we should be able to do it by hand. So pretty much the alternator is all loose because there's only 2 bolts on this guy. Still a little bit tight, so I'm gonna give it a little bit turns with my smaller ratchet. Alright, so a few more turns, and let's see if I could turn this by hand now. Alright, there you go. The bolt is a little rusty. That's normal for old. This is original alternator in here. You can't even see any of the numbers on it. But anyways, I'm gonna show you the part number on the new one. I'm gonna be using a Remy brand, and the piece is around like 160, and it gives you a lifetime warranty. All right, so as long as you have the car, it's warranted. You should speak to your mechanic. So if an alternator always fails, he'll just charge you labor. You still get a free alternator. But anyway, this is all loose. All right, so I'm gonna go get a pry bar to yank it out of there. Okay, so I got me a pry bar here. So it is not gonna come on out on its own because it's stiff in there, but you could use this pry bar to yank it a little bit. Just don't break anything, especially this oil pressure sensor on the top. And just yank a little bit. And the alternator is pretty much free. There you go. And we're gonna lift this alternator up. Don't let it drop. There you go. Alright, so here's my new alternator. I want to show you one little trick, okay? So you see this little guy right here? This needs to be pushed back. Usually what you can do is grab your old bolt, stick it right through. And a lot of people, what they do is they hit it with the hammer. Let me get a hammer. Alright, so what they do is you have to make this go back. Other than that, you're gonna have a rough time putting this in. So you could tap it softly, nothing crazy. All right, once it's even to the surface, you're good. Okay, you can even use a C-clamp. You use some type of socket in the back because you don't want to be pressuring the same plate. But anyway, that's a little trick. Also, use a file to clean the surface here, okay? Because this alternator, it grinds itself. If it has paint, it's not gonna give it good voltage on the ground, okay? So try to do both sides. Just like that, all right? So there you go. And then we're gonna take this alternator, we're gonna put it right back in there. And what you're gonna do is you're gonna simply take this alternator, line it, and it's gonna sit right over there. You see how easy that was? You take your upper bolt, you're gonna have to stick this bolt in there, try to get it all the way in there and catch the threads. All right, once you catch the threads, try to get it as much as you can. Right here, nice and tight in there, but it's not tight to its specs. Okay, I'm gonna give you the specs to torque these, but let's get this second bolt right down here. So it's held in by, like I said, 2 bolts only. All right. And both of these are 38 foot-pounds, so that's how tight you're gonna put these bolts. So I got the second bolt in there, and that's it. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna try to snug them and tighten both of these bolts to 38 foot-pounds. I'm still snugging it in. Remember that little guy we pushed back with hammer? It's gonna come back, okay? So just keep tightening it till you feel that it has snugged itself, and then torque it to 38 foot-pounds. Okay, there you go. So I'm gonna torque it now. So what we're gonna do is first, let's take this guy out of here. All right, don't drop it because it'll touch the surface and it'll short circuit. All right. So anyways, let's remove this little guy right here. Comes with the new bolt. We're gonna put this guy in there just to be safe. Let's do it first. Let's put our bolt on it. So there you go. We got the bolt on. All right, and then we gotta do two more things. Okay, one is put this connector back in, make sure it clicks like that, make sure there's a little rubber boost going it. This is not tight, all right? Make sure you tighten this to best of your ability. And hand tight or torque, I do not have specs on this, okay? So tighten that really good. And we have one bracket here, which I'm gonna put. Because this is gonna hold that harness in there. We're gonna take it over to that alternator, the new one, because this is where the harness is held in by. There you go. I'm gonna put it on this alternator here, and the number 10 goes right there. And make sure you tighten this really good. Alright, so I need to tighten this and this. You're not going to see me do that, but make sure you tighten it and make sure this clip is going to go back in. So we're going to remove this retainer again and put this harness back in there. It goes under that water pump, over the AC compressor, and around the water pump. So we're going to pull on this tensioner, same thing. Yank it, give it a little slack, give it another try. Okay, there you go. Bada bing, bada boom. Job is done. Alright, just make sure you check your belt. Make sure it's routed really good. But anyways, after this, you can crank the car and check the voltage on the alternator.